Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience Podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions.
Be fire hazard, all that, and it has to be replaced. Here's the thing: you have any idea how many houses I've walked that have Zinsco panels and still do to this day?
No.
They're literally fire hazards, man. And there were millions of them. There's millions.
I'm gonna go check my one.
There's millions of them out there right now.
Wow.
Well, I can check it if you'd like, but it's one of those things where it's a safety thing, right? And it's something that people don't realize. They don't realize it's going on. A few years ago, I got a call from a home inspector. Home inspector said there's something seriously wrong with this house. Mm-hmm. And he was calling me because I was the broker of an office that was representing the buyer.
Yeah.
And he was calling me because he couldn't get a hold of my agent. So he reached out to me and he said, listen, I know you by reputation. And I know that this is not something that you're going to let go unnoticed. And I said, okay, talk to me. What's going on? There was an addition that was made. And when the addition was made, the wiring was not run correctly. And so this flipper came in and bought the place, and they put copper wire in the extra added room and introduced it into an environment of aluminum wire. Well, when you do that, the aluminum wire catches fire in the wall. So he went to test the outlet, and the outlet caught fire, and his tester caught fire.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So he called me and he said, listen, I know exactly what this is. I know exactly what's happening. And he said, your people should cancel. Okay. So I called the flipper. And I said, listen, I actually know this person. I've known him for years. I called him up and I said, listen, we've known each other a long time. I've got a buyer that we're representing that's my agent's representing that is in escrow on your place. And this just happened. And his response to me was, those are the chances they take. That's why you hire a home inspector. Not, Mike, we're going to come over and rip it out and make it right. It was, this is a risk that they take. And when you guys cancel, we're just going to put it on the market and sell it again. Yeah. That's not good.
No.
That's not a good response.
No.
Right? And you can imagine what I did with that. Anyway, so fire hazards, unfortunately, are with housing is a big deal. And that many people living in that house, it probably overloaded the system and caused an electrical fire, and that's what caused the thing to burn. That's what's going on right now.
I mean,
there's a lot of houses out there that have 100 amp panels, and they need 200 nowadays.
Yeah, no, it's a possibility.
It's like you go in your bathroom and you turn on the hair dryer.
Yes.
And it flips a switch, and all of a sudden you don't have power in half your house. That's a problem.
Yeah.
People don't realize it because they just go flip the switch, right?
Yes.
So, anyway.
Yeah.
Didn't mean to go down a rabbit hole.
No, absolutely. I'm gonna go check my. I'm gonna go take a picture.
Take a picture and send it to me. Take a picture and send it to me. But Zinsco panels are something that need to be replaced because they're absolutely fire hazards, and they were found in court to be a fire hazard.
Okay.
And so it's just one of those things that when you were telling me about it just happened to pop in my mind. You can't imagine how many of those I've seen over the years, and I'm talking hundreds of them.
Yeah.
And when I see them, I just get a chill because I know that that's a potential silent killer.
Yeah.
So anyway,
there's a story I want to do here in San Diego that I think is a uniquely San Diego story, and please help me find the cul-de-sac for this. That for so many people here, it's not what you bought, it's when you bought.
Mm-hmm.
Ashley and I, with your guidance, we've benefited from, our housing journey. We've moved 3 times in the last 10 years, each time moving up. And so, you have my in-laws who live on this cul-de-sac over in the Fletcher Hills area. maybe 15 homes on it.
Mm-hmm.
They bought their house in 1986, and they paid, $289. They've been in it ever since. The house across the street sold 18 months ago for 1.6. So, you have these neighborhoods where people of different economic backgrounds, different ages, are all living next to each other because of the timing of the market. And I would just love to be able to go into one of these streets and talk to every homeowner in that block saying, what's your monthly payment? Because you have neighbors living next to each other where somebody's paying $400 on a 28-year-old refi, living next to somebody that's probably paying $6,400, and they're neighbors. And it's just an interesting, I think it's a unique San Diego thing that you have houses that somebody bought for $200,000 right next to the house that somebody bought for 1.2.
Yeah.
And the houses are not different.
Yeah.
No, they are the same. That, we had a guy that we went to church with that grew up in, didn't grow up, he bought 2 post-World War II houses in LA Gardens. Paid $40,000 for them. And the families moving in next door are paying $860.
Yeah.
So it's just an interesting dynamic here.
Yeah, so I've got the cul-de-sac for you,
All right.
and I actually have a few of them.
Okay.
So that is a unique San Diego thing. It's true in other places, but it's not as true as it is here. Only because, for people that don't know, we actually, I don't know if you know this or not, but I did a podcast about you.
Oh boy.
Okay. So we did a podcast. We did a podcast called Mike Time.
Yeah.
And we talked about the conversation that you and I had, where you called me, I think it was last year, and you said, Mike, we just have to thank you.
Yeah.
And it got me. I mean, it really got me. And it was one of those things, in 2011 when we met, you had called me because of a newswire that you had received where it said that sales were up but values were down.
Yes.
And you called me off my radio show and you said, how is this possible? And I said, well, actually, it's very simple. 47% of all the closed transactions at the time, I remember this conversation like it was yesterday, were either short sales or bank-owned properties. And the bank was the entity that was making the decision on what they sold for. The banks had lowered their prices enough. It was a business decision for them, but they had lowered the prices enough to where owner occupants jumped in and so did investors. And prices went down and sales went up. And you said, perfect, will you come on Thursday morning and we'll have Dan Cohen, our anchor, interview you live on Channel 8.
Yes.
And that was such a big deal. And it was such a cool experience, right? The thing is, you walked me out to my car. And when you walked me out to my car, you said, hey, Ashley and I are pre-approved. We're ready to buy a place, but we've been putting it off because everybody's telling us not to. You just told Dan that the best advice for buyers is if you can, buy now. Did you? And I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't have said it if I didn't believe it, right?
Yes.
And then you go out and buy, and you did okay.
Oh, so we, you and I had that conversation. And I mean, Ashley and I have been, we've been very blessed because we jump first and think later. Taking a job in Jersey.
Right. Flip-flops in the snow.
Yes. Yes. So literally. So we, you and I talked, and Ashley and I, we're living in a 2-bedroom apartment in Tierra Santa. Emma was a couple months old, so maybe 2 months old.
So she was brand new.
Yeah, and we I think borrowed $2,000 from my parents for a down payment. She had something, and we bought the second place that we looked at, which was a 1,100 square foot condo over in San Carlos that we loved. I mean, it was our first home. We loved it, and it was a bank owned, and I mean, they were ready to offload that thing so quick that, I mean, it just happened that, 30 days later, we're sitting there moving furniture in, and we're like, what happened? And we got in on that place, and we were there 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then you called me and you said, "Hey, Big Kahuna." I said, "What?" He said, "Sell your house." I said, "What?" You said, "Sell your house." And I returned and looked at Ashton and said, "Hey, Mike called. He says we got to sell in the next 2 weeks." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because he did." I said, "All right." So we've been in this thing.
Because he said so.
I said, October of 2011 is when we bought it.
We met in September of 2011.
Yeah, I know. That was born in May. So, yeah, October 2011 we bought this place.
Yeah.
And sold it just over 2 years later. And it sold in 5 days at almost double what we had paid for it.
Yeah, and I remember that conversation too, because you're like, okay, can we sell our house and then go buy a house? How do we do this? And it was like, okay, there's a couple
We
different
moved
ways.
into an apartment.
Yeah.
So, that is, and Ashley was pregnant with her second child. No, that was the second time. Maybe we weren't. Anyway, but yeah, it was sell this, go into an apartment. There's housing everywhere.
Go find a place.
And then go find a place. And we ended up on a house that we had looked at, was out of our range.
Mm-hmm.
Single family, 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom in Fletcher Hills. It is adorable. It's built in '59.
Mm-hmm.
Had aluminum wiring and a bad panel. I will say it was a pier and beam house.
Yeah.
And, advice to anybody listening, if you have a house that you're going to have plumbing problems with, buy a pier and beam because it's going to save you a ton of money.
It's a lot less to repair. It really
if
is.
you have a house you can crawl under like a car.
Yeah. So pier and beam is a raised foundation. So when you're talking about that, you're talking about something where you don't have to jackhammer up a slab, right, in order to get to the plumbing. So just for people that are not familiar with what we're talking about, that's what we're talking about. And the reason why it's less money is because you can take up floorboards and you can get to the plumbing from under, maybe crawl space, whatever. You can actually get to the plumbing without having to jackhammer anything up. So that's where the savings is basically in terms of the expense.
So we looked at this house and it was out of our range, and the previous buyer's financing fell through.
Yeah.
And that listing agent said, "Hey, you still interested?" Like, yep, out of the apartment into the house. And we were there for 5 years. Loved it. It was our family's home. And then, the next decision was driven by interest rates. That, my wife's an accountant for a mortgage company, a large mortgage company based in Detroit. And we saw the writing on the wall with these rates. And so it was August of 2021, maybe 2020, August 2020. And we moved purely for interest rates. And values were up. So we made, almost double again. And moved out of that one. You and I talked about the rates. And then we moved into a rental home that our church owns. And we planned on being there for 30 days. So, it looked like college. We were living out of bags with mattresses on the floor. Kids were doing that at-home school. Pandemic, middle of it. And we're in 888 square feet in Claremont with 3 bedrooms and 1 bathroom and 5 people.
Right.
And we were going to be there for a month, and 120 days later, because we had never had to deal with an inventory issue where there were low interest rates, prices had not fully exploded, and we weren't as smart as we thought we were. Because there were other people that were being well advised as well.
The thing is, everybody during the shutdown was crawling the walls.
Yes.
Right? And I remember the conversation we had about Ashley's not ever going to work in the office again.
Correct.
She really needs her own office. And so that is a need more than anything else, right? But everybody else was having the same situation. They were, when the shutdown actually stopped, people were busting out. They were absolutely climbing the walls. And everything that they owned and or rented was too small. It just was too small for them. And so they made themselves a promise that when the shutdown was over, they were going to get out, and man, did they ever. They got out in there like it was no tomorrow. Yeah. And Alan Nevin called it a tidal wave. Well, or tsunami, actually.
The agent that we were working with at the time, and we loved him, They were cold calling, they were knocking. And at one point, we were getting desperate being in that, that rental property, that there was a person in the neighborhood that had, waffled on, am I going to list it or not? And our agent at the time walked up and went, my name is so-and-so. I have a written offer for your home for this much money in this closing day. We had not seen the inside of this house. We did not know who this individual was. And I mean, we went past the step of the letter, the email, the call, to we wrote up a binding offer and said, will you sell it to us?
Yeah.
And they said, no. And it was just one of those, moments of, what are we doing? That this is absolutely crazy. And then we were able to get onto a house that it needed some love. It was a remodel on top of a remodel on top of a remodel. So, you walk a lot of houses. We had walked a lot of houses at that time. And we're able
many at that point, right?
We're able to walk in there and, kind of cut through the crap and say, this will be perfect for our family. And it has been.
Yeah.
So, and now interest rates are where they're at, and we're like, we're good.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding, man. You're in a good place right now.
I mean, again, with the interesting thing about San Diego, you have so many folks that are, either empty nesters or retirees that are in 5-bedroom, 2,500 square foot, 3,000 square foot houses. I mean, that's how I describe Olive Park Village over Mosquitoes at this point. That it's folks that bought their houses, raised their families, and they're not. You can't afford to downsize. It doesn't make sense. So,
well, not right now, anyway.
No, so stay there, and you're the expert on this. Stay there, pay your electric bill, and write it out.
Exactly. Yeah. I can't thank you enough for doing this. This has been so much fun. So, is there anything else you want to cover before we wrap up?
No, I mean, just that, I love San Diego. It's an interesting place, having the benefit of living other places, working other places. I think it's something that there's not a whole lot of native San Diegans. I think a lot of people are either brought here through industry or the military, and they end up here. Or they come back here. And so I've moved to San Diego now 3 times. If I ever leave, I'm just getting a storage unit because I know I'm going to be back.
Right.
And so I think, watching this community grow, watching, downtown change, watching Mission Valley change. I mean, every time I drive past Savita over here, I was like, where did that come from?
Exactly.
I forget that we have a new stadium. Watching the Gaylord project going up down in Chula Vista. San Diego 20 years from now, if they get the Midway project up off the ground, it's going to look different. It's going to feel different, but I think it's still going to maintain that, everybody has a small town. That when you say, where am I from in San Diego, that it's Serra Mesa, it's Kearney Mesa, it's Claremont Mesa. It's all of the mesas.
My community, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So, and there's pride in that. And the other thing that I think is interesting is, how much neighborhoods have changed and shifted over the years. When Ashley and I first met, we used to go to this church, El Cajon Boulevard Church of Christ, which was right there, El Cajon Boulevard near Texas Street. Mid-90s, that neighborhood was much different than it is now, and you drive through there and you're like, where did this investment come from? Like, what was it, the chicken pie shop that they built a building around, and it's like, wow, this entire community's changing. I'm not the one to say if it's for the better or for the worse. Parking situations for the worse.
Yeah, parking is for the worse, that's for sure.
The city of San Diego needs to pull their head out and build housing with parking.
Yeah, no kidding.
But
and everything else with parking too, by the way.
So fix Balboa Park. But there's a lot of just change that's going around that is both perceived and visual. And I mean, the entire area is changing for probably the next 100 years.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks for doing this.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I love you, buddy.
Thank you.
Good to have you.
We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.